technology. So I think whoever interested in investing can look into that.
Yeah, interesting when you talk about blockchain. That's a new keyword in the investment field right now these days. For those who, well, there was a survey that like 80% people or 90% investors don't know what blockchain is, but maybe you guys know. Well, blockchain is the technology developed in 2008, and it's being used by Bitcoin. So it's the same kind of technology, similar technology, and basically it's, you put bits of data up into the web, and it's public, it's not free, it's public, so that different pockets of data can be cross-referenced and also be verified at the same time. So the key thing, the key buzz these days are talking about fintech, blockchain in fintechs. Of course, that dwells into big data and how we use big data as well.
Yeah, a lot of like business contract probably can use that technology as well. And another thing, like when talking about the security, privacy, like one of my classmates, they started a company doing private cloud security. So this is also kind of like technology can look into. I think, and also like when it comes to big data, then a lot of we will be processing a lot of data. Also, we need to process a lot of the data. We have to process it in real time. So we have some other company, they do like a disk array, for very high performance storage solutions. So this kind of technology is also interesting. So usually, what I found interesting is like once you probably whatever reason you invest in one company, then you can actually look into companies that run their core business. Then there might be more interesting things coming out.
Yeah, as investors, one of the other things that we look into, like big data company, is what exactly, like you said, there's a high loading on servers. So especially on high-grade kind of servers, storage systems, and also the bandwidth at the same time. Of course, we all know that China has its own unique system over there. And so when we're looking into a lot of these kind of projects coming from overseas, wanting to go into China or China wanting to go outside, the internet bandwidth and also the storage, also the use of the computers itself is one of the major investments, actually a major investment in terms of for an investor to actually think about, because the bulk of the money may have to go into the infrastructure of these servers, and for an investor that is not exactly a good thing to hear, because you're not putting most of the money into actually making the business work, but you're just investing into some cost where it's like, hey, running some data, running all these things around here. Yes, you can put the cloud in. Of course, the cloud in China is very unique than the cloud outside around in the world. So you need two different clouds. And that's a whole thing that when, as investors, when we look into these sorts of big data kind of projects, we also look into the kind of money where it's being put into. Are we putting the money into investing in gathering the data, analyzing the data, and selling the data, or are you just putting it into infrastructure as is? Because once it's infrastructure, there's always the risk that, hey, it's going to shut down, it's going to be too expensive, and suddenly you're being locked out because you run out of funds. So these are things I'm looking at these days in terms of, especially on the medical side these days, because there's a lot of people talking about big data in medical.
Yeah, I know this. Quite a few companies in China, they are doing like big data in medical. I personally only invest in one. That one, I probably won't make too many of medical, because there's a lot of domain knowledge needed in that. But if it's something along that line, maybe it's okay. And one of the areas like the gene, gene
mapping.
Gene mapping. That one is very, essentially it's a big data thing, because you have to have enough data to actually do something. You can have the technology to the gene detection. Honestly, actually, all of the companies in China, they do gene detection. They use US technology to do that. So usually it costs about, I I think the cost about for collecting one people's gene mapping is about like 10,000 RMB, and usually if you go there do one test, they will charge about 30,000. Usually you have to at least 100,000 people like sample size to actually do something reasonable. That means like it's very hard for a startup to do. So you know that's actually 1 billion RMB for cost only. So just like you said, whoever say they do big data, and then not a lot of this big data thing is not for small startups.
Yeah, it's definitely not, and it's a big chunk of money for investors as well initially. And it's interesting because let's not talk about medical anymore, because big data is pretty much like everywhere in the world. When we talk about e-commerce, for example, some of the very standard kind of industries around here, e-commerce, you can still get a lot of data around here, but and also when you go onto online to buy some things, you get recommendations from the outside on the side thing. That's big data kind of analysis as well, and that's been here for like at least for 5 years or more or so. And that's one of the things that we also look into as well, how we leverage on existing e-commerce data and leverage onto something else in terms of different industries. But it's difficult because it's when some of the projects coming on from overseas and say, I want to go into China, the first question I ask them is, do you know how big China is? You want to cover all of China? So far, apart from the government, no one can actually cover entire China. So even large listed companies, they try to cover all of China but fail. So they're just doing pockets of cities in different parts, because China has like more than like 600 kind of cities around here, and these are like different unique kind of culture and different consumer behaviors. And so it's like when these projects come in and say, hey, I want to do big data, or I'm doing something that's similar, the first question is, are you actually refining and focusing on 1 or 2 cities coming in first? Because the culture is very different, the laws and legislations are very different in terms of in China as well. So if you are successful, say for example in India or in somewhere else, you might not be able to work in China because it's very different.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I always run into company startups, so they say, oh, I'm building this system, it's going to be a platform of whatever. So my advice is that, okay, don't try to be a platform, like try to do big things, because right now, internet or mobile internet space in China is quite different from a few years ago. We have this very dominant player like a BAT, right? Also, we have a lot of other big companies, right? So they have all the resource and the financial strength to do a lot of things with whoever wants to do a platform. Like actually, once you want to be a platform, that means you're trying to compete with almost everybody. So the good part is, usually I want to see company, they actually have something not necessarily big, it's like small, maybe from your side, maybe like a region, like for me, maybe like very narrow vertical that you can get in. In that area, you can actually be the number one. Right? Once you establish that position, then you can expand into other areas, or you can expand into other places, right? So if you want to try to do too much in the beginning, then usually you won't be able to success.
Well, we still have a few more minutes. Anyone here would like to ask some specific questions in terms of their investments? Or yes?
Today we're talking about big data in China and Asia. We are in Hong Kong now. So how about the Hong Kong project? Because Hong Kong is a quite unique market. No matter it's SME or even the big corporate, they using the IT data or those tools is quite slow, old-fashioned. So how do you see the Hong Kong projects? I think Hong Kong will coming up much more interesting project. Do you see it's worth to invest in?
Sure. I personally right now only interested in 2 areas, which both of them I think are related to Hong Kong. One is I call it smart hardware. The reason I'm interested in that because I came from an engineering background. my undergrad was majored in EE, and I worked for Intel for a few years as well. So I know. Also, I'm interested in all this like new hardware and software combined technology, and more importantly, we become a much more connected world right now, right? So like the IoT, like all the things happening right now. So we will need the smart hardware to collect the data for us. So we talk about big data, then you have to have data, right? So we are getting into in more and more data will be much more easily collected. For example, we have this wristband to track people's movements, but actually right now WeChat has it built in already, right? So which makes it much easier to connect. You don't even have to wear an additional device to do that. So I think going forward, like we will see a lot of things getting smarter in our home. Your lamps may be able to play music and having different color and matching your mood, something like that. Your Wi-Fi system, your Wi-Fi system may be able to control your air conditioning, all these things. So all these things, I think in Hong Kong we actually have a much better chance to do it. I don't know, people have been talking about IoT for Hong Kong for a long time. I don't know when will it really happen, but Hong Kong, people have much higher income level. They probably have more disposable income for like smart things, like whatever it is, and which will connect more data, right? This is one thing. The other things, I think, Hong Kong is a financial center, so we actually have a lot of information already there. But we were just talking about this reporter earlier said, I think Hong Kong need to focus on really innovation in technology itself, not business model innovation like in China right now. Even in China right now, we are going through a phase right now from business model innovation into like a technology innovation right now. So I think Hong Kong has some advantage to do that. There's one big limitation is Hong Kong, whatever the reason, political, whatever. So Hong Kong usually the market is kind of separated from mainland. So a lot of startups, they have this mindset. Basically, they say, I'm going to do it just in Hong Kong, and if it works well, I go to Southeast Asia. They usually don't think about China. If I go to China, then people will steal my technology, then something like that. I think so. Usually, my recommendation is if you want to run a business which you want to attract investment or you want to make it big, you have to think about mainland in the first place. If you think it's not something you can really really suitable for mainland, it probably not worth quitting your job, because in Hong Kong it's very not so hard to find a good paying job, right? So to do it, I don't know. So I think that the biggest challenge is probably the mindset of a lot of investors or even startup. They need to really look at China directly. Also think about global. A lot of technology right now have to be global. Even in China, a lot of companies right now they are thinking about going outside. So, and also think about what Hong Kong has, mainland and other places doesn't have, right? So I think recently there's an article, a talk given by Li Xiaojia, I think he talked about like what Hong Kong has done for mainland in the past, and what Hong Kong can still be, having an advantage going forward. I think people probably should read that, a few times, and Hong Kong need to focus on whatever the advantage it has, and should not try to replicate whatever the mainland is doing. So anyway, so I think I'm giving a long answer towards I don't know if I answer your question, but I think I still believe like Hong Kong has a lot of advantage in terms of the talent. We have several very top quality universities, and the graduates very. So we need to find a way to keep them in Hong Kong, right? Give them opportunity to really having a successful career or have successful business in Hong Kong instead of other place. We also have very good financial system, and how do we leverage that to use technology to really move that advantage forward. And we also have very modern city, and which can be much more easily transferred into a smart city, right? So, and there's a lot of opportunity there as well.
Well, one of the things I look, of course, with is Hong Kong. If we talk about big data projects and comparing with what we see like a few years ago, the projects these days are much more mature these days. The example I gave in terms of the medicine, the kind of big data medicine, is coming out from Hong Kong actually, and they're trying to do something in the Chinese medical field. Now, this is something that's pretty much unique to Asia in a way, because the Harvard University professors or researchers in the US, they're trying to gather some Asian data, related kind of data coming in from Asian parts. And Hong Kong is probably the first area they will be looking at. So if we can, I'm not saying that you have to do Chinese medicine or nothing else at all, but if you can leverage on the position, the unique position of Hong Kong being in the center of Asia, and also being a bridge towards China and to other places in different parts of the world, and also in terms of Asia, and when the Western world or the European world is all looking into Asia right now, is there something that Hong Kong can actually leverage upon? And so that's one of the things that I will be looking at in terms of, okay, we got overseas investors and they're looking at, hey, I've got customers over there, and they're looking at specifically Asian kind of data, which they can't replicate over in US or in Europe. So these are things that I'm sure that there will be, I couldn't think of anything else right now, I'm sure that there will be new data or new projects coming along where people will be thinking about, hey, this is the strength of Hong Kong, and we are in a very unique position. Can we leverage on that? And it relates to big data, because pretty much everything is big data. And that's it. When people say big data, I'm not saying that you have to cover like 1 billion people. Even 1,000 people or 2,000 people, good quality kind of data is actually good enough to do actually very good business. But don't just think about the big picture, the very big picture that I want to cover all China first. Try to cover like Hong Kong first. And if those kind of things is relevant to Hong Kong, is it relevant to other places? And that's where we see how it replicates to other places. I'm sorry, but timing is a little bit short today. Let's close off with one advice for all the investors. If we are just advising them in terms of thinking about big data investments, what should we advise them?
I think if you are thinking about investing and you haven't done it already, probably the good thing is like you start doing some investment, and what you can do, you can maybe do co-investments with a few people, and once you put in money in certain projects, you probably will learn much more from that project, and also all the opportunities around it. But otherwise, if you just look around, then usually you probably won't be able to find the real opportunity.
My advice when we're trying to look into big data, like I said, you have to look into the ethics as well in terms of gathering the data, how you analyze the data, and are you actually selling the data or using it for something else? So it's not just about the data itself, but the leverage or the actual business operations of how you're actually using it. And of course it goes into what you believe, the privacy, is it ethical, is this something that goes against your thoughts and your own ideologies? That is something that's unique, and it's unique to each and every investor. So not everything is okay for you, but some things may be more okay than the other ones. So thank you very much for today. We're having a 10-minute break right now, and after that we will be coming back and I will be talking to you about some of the projects I'm going to update to every one of you. Thank you very much. Let's have a 10 minutes.
Thanks.
Thank you, Nanjing, as well. Please give Nanjing a big hand.